Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this week Wargaming released the second iteration of Crew 2.0 on the Sandbox test server. The first version of Crew 2.0 went up in February, which I covered in a very detailed video highlighting the good, the bad, and the ugly about Crew 2.0. This time, nearly 5 months later, Wargaming have apparently carefully analyzed all of our feedback and the statistics that they obtained, and they have particularly paid attention to the most controversial aspects that sparked the hottest discussions. Considering this bold statement and the amount of time between iterations of Crew 2.0, I had high hopes. But unfortunately, after watching Wargaming's video, it's very clear to me why the community are pretty much panning it with regards to their feedback. Accordingly, in today's video, I'm going to highlight just what the community has to be worried about with Crew 2.0, and also why Wargaming have pretty much not listened to our feedback from the first iteration. Firstly, let me clarify that I will not be covering everything which I featured in my video in February. There was a reason why it was 37 minutes long, and in the interest of keeping this video as short as I possibly can, I'm not going to be reiterating all of the good things about Crew 2.0 which still remain in the system. Right off the bat, I want to address, will your crews remain as competitive in Crew 2.0 as they do now? Well, let's take my Type 5 Heavy as an example. I have a commander with 6th Sense, Brothers-in-Arms, Repairs, and Recon. I have a gunner with Designated Target, Repairs, and Snapshot. I have a driver with Preventative Maintenance, Clutch Braking, and Repairs. I have a radio operator with Repairs and Situational Awareness. One loader with Intuition, Safe Stowage, and Repairs, and another loader with Intuition and Repairs. The only things that I really feel that I'm missing on this vehicle would be off-road driving, possibly Adrenaline Rush, and if you're a bit of a weirdo, Controlled Impact. Apart from that, I feel that this crew is just as competitive as somebody who's managed to get 6 or 7 skills in World of Tanks. So let's see what happens if we convert them using Wargaming's new conversion process. If I choose Mobilize, all of the crew get molded into one crew member, or one set of crew if you want to call them that. And let's take a look to see what skills in my opinion, near perfect crew has been assigned. So that more or less 4-skill crew has been converted into a new commander that is level 56 out of 80. And I also noticed that now I no longer have 10 out of 10 in pretty much any of these aspects apart from Brothers-in-Arms. This conversion process has some massive fundamental flaws. While Wargaming would argue that this conversion process leaves you with the same kind of talents as you had previously, because you haven't spent 30 points in any of the individual trees, it leaves you without the all-important perks. For example, Torque gives you 10% increased engine power up to 40 kilometers an hour, which a Type 5 Heavy is always going to be below. That's a massive buff. That's the equivalent of having a turbocharger on your tank. And remember, if my commander had been level 80, I would have been able to apply 30 points in 2 of these trees and pick 2 of these game-changing talents. In addition to this, I noticed that I don't really have 10 out of 10 in any of these areas, and I'm bemused that even though I felt that I had Intuition maxed on both of my loaders, now I only have 7 out of 10 points in that area. But here is the biggest problem with Crew 2.0 for a player that has 4 skills on their current tank. Previously, I felt that I had pretty much everything apart from 1 or 2 skills on the Type 5 Heavy. A 4-skill crew is hard enough to be able to get as it is. In fact, to be able to get to level 56 in the new system, that is 2,250,000 experience, probably the equivalent of playing at least 1,000 games of World of Tanks, maybe with a premium account. In the new system, even 1,000 games of World of Tanks with a single crew only leaves them being semi-competitive. Other players with more skilled crews against my Type 5 Heavy now might have up to 24 additional points to spend, giving them some massive boosts in certain areas. For example, they could have spent 10 points in close combat. This will make their vehicle 2.5% better with regards to crew skills. And they could have also been able to take those 2 additional talents. My Type 5 Heavy has gone from being pretty much just as competitive as any Type 5 Heavy out there with a 4-skill crew to now severely lacking in the new Crew 2.0 feature. And considering how long it takes to be able to grind up these tech trees, which you have to do individually for all of your crews, the mind boggles at the idea of getting up to hundreds of your vehicles into a competitive order. Effectively, what Wargaming are doing with Crew 2.0 is they're changing the goalposts for how much you have to play the game or pay into the game to be competitive. And considering I ran a survey which said that 88% of the player base do not have a 6 or a 7 skill crew in any of their current vehicles, 88% of the player base are not going to have a maxed out crew. But you can almost be darn sure the same can't be said for the 279E or the Chieftain on the enemy team. Now I want to talk about just how darn scary the new experience requirements are if you want to get all the way to level 80 and beyond. But more on that later on in the video today. My Type 5 Heavy that we were just talking about, as I mentioned, landed at level 56. That's 2,250,000 experience. And I feel that currently in the non-Crew 2.0, that's about the level where I start to feel that I'm just as competitive as anyone else, minus 1 or 2 areas. Now, if you want to push on towards level 60 to be able to get 2 talents, if you invest 30 points into each of the trees, that's 2.75 million experience. And if you want to get all the way to 80, it's going to be 6,750,000 experience. Now, of course, some players out there will have an absolute load of credits, and you can use crew books to be able to boost a crew from level 1 all the way up to level 80, just like that. But for every single one of your crews, it's going to cost 54 million credits. Look, I bust the bank to be able to afford the WZ-111 Qilin in the black market, and also the T-22 medium tank. I don't have the cash, the will, or the drive to try and get 54 million credits to be able to boost a crew up like that. But again, now that there's such an incentive to do so, you could argue that players are going to strive to be able to achieve that. One of my favorite things in World of Tanks is all of the different vehicles I have and the wide variety of vehicles that I can play. And I feel like after 60,000 games played of World of Tanks, I've earned the right to play all of those vehicles more or less competitively. If Wargaming shift the goalposts like this, I will never, even if I was to play World of Tanks for the rest of my life, have all of the vehicles in my garage up to a competitive level ever again. And for me, that is an absolute terrifying concept. And the fact that I will feel that I'm hindering my ability to be competitive if I don't focus all of my training in very small areas on just a handful of tanks might actually break my will or desire to even bother grinding in the first place. Next up, I want to talk about instructors. Now, Wargaming have done a great job with instructors as to allowing you to pick specific skills for your instructors, so it no longer feels as if you're opening FIFA packs and kind of getting lucky as to whether one of your instructors is actually useful or not. However, not everybody, like me, is fortunate enough to have bought all of the premium content, to have bought all of those Brothers in Arms crews, to have had a Twitch Prime account for many years and been collecting all of the extra commanders that you managed to get from that. And it's undoubtable that for the majority of players, having crew instructors, which are going to be so integral for you to achieve on all of your tanks, is just not going to be a reality. Now, what do instructors do for your vehicles? Well, they actually boost certain skills beyond the otherwise maximum. Let's take a look at my EBR, for example. I've managed to put 10 points in concealment, and then I'm using a directive to boost concealment up from 10 skill points up to 11. Now, this gives me a camouflage of 59% currently on the Crew 2.0 test server. But just what happens to my concealment if I get 2 of the instructors? Let's put Santa Claus in here, who's going to boost my rationing and concealment on the vehicle. And now let's get Father Frost, the Russian equivalent of Santa Claus. We're going to put him in the tank, and luckily he is related, so he is doing exactly the same crew skills. Okay, so now what we can see is that we actually have 15 points into concealment, boosting up the buff to our light tank by 150%. So we've gone from level 11 up to level 15 because of having 2 instructors that we've applied to this vehicle. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, our concealment has gone up to just shy of 69% when we're moving, effectively buffing the concealment on this vehicle by over 10% just because we have 2 instructors on it. And yeah, what do you think happens when you have an EBR 105 with 69% concealment? So I'm on the sandbox test server. Please keep that in mind, because what I'm about to do is kind of a little bit of a, should we say, bad manners here. There's an EBR 105 on my team who is sitting in a bush, and I'm going to show this EBR 105 that, hey buddy, what are you doing? Why are you sitting in a bush? No need to sit in a bush. Why don't you just set your vehicle up correctly like I have? You can have 69% camo when you're moving, and effectively we're going to end up doing donuts in front of the vehicle. He seems to be looking at me like, what is this guy doing? I hope he doesn't think that I'm actually trying to troll him and that I'm spotted and trying to get him hit. That wasn't my intention. We have managed to make a nice figure of 8 in front of him. What I'm trying to show you here is that we're literally driving within about 200 meters of the griller there, and the griller is not spotting us. Now we're spotting a 121B at 300 meters. I'm going to speed this replay up a little bit and just take a look at this. We're not spotted, boys and girls. We're not spotted here right now. There's a chieftain 300 meters away. You might be wondering, how did that Jagdpanzer 100 just hit you? That was him shooting my gun because he's trying to blind fire the bushes to kill the griller behind me. We're 250 meters away from a T110E4. We're not using the bushes to avoid his view range. I'm just doing figures of 8 once again out here. And I was 176 meters away from the griller, and the griller can't see us. How do you counter this? How is Wargaming so ignorant that they could have put this onto a sandbox test server in its second iteration 5 months after the first? Watch what we're about to do here. We're literally going to drive in the middle of 2 tanks, one 214 meters away from us and one 203 meters away from us. And what can they do? The answer is that they just can't do anything. They can't manage to spot me because, of course, I have 69% concealment. We drive all the way past the Jagdpanzer 100. We get over towards the artillery, and we kill 1 artillery and we kill a 2nd artillery. And some of you might be thinking, oh, well, it's great that you've managed to kill the artillery, but that's not the point. The point here is that you can get your camo rating so high on your light tanks, but only if you have instructors, which are more or less a premium currency, so that light tanks will become more or less uncounterable. How do you find a vehicle with 69% camo when it's moving at tier 10? So if you think setting up an EBR like this hinders its ability to be able to spot, you'd be incorrect there as well. Later on in this game, once we've managed to get up to 3,900 spotting, and we get the additional 7.5% crew skill from one of the talents called Team Spirit that you can see along the bottom of the bar here, we're actually getting up to about 523 meters view range in an EBR 105. And this gives the enemy pretty much no hope of being able to spot me, of course, unless I fire at them and then I blow all of my camo rating out. EBR 105s are one of those tanks that scale very highly with crew skills. That's why it's almost mandatory to use bond equipment on this tank with a perfect setup crew. With Crew 2.0 allowing you to be able to take crew training further than ever before possible in World of Tanks, vehicles that have dubious abilities, which when min-maxed are incredibly toxic, are definitely going to become even more of a reality. But it's not just light tanks that are able to do stupid things. What you're going to be seeing here is an Object 268 version 4 that is speccing for mobility and, more importantly, the ability to repair its tracks incredibly quickly. I'm not even going to use a repair kit on this tank. I'm going to use remove speed governors instead to be able to give myself even more engine power. And you could see that we were able to repair our tracks when combined with Equipment 2.0 in pretty much a couple of seconds. Now in this kind of situation, you've got to applaud the Leopard 1 for what they're doing here. They fire a shot into our tracks, the STB-1 follows it up. We, however, managed to repair our tracks really quickly, and suddenly a vehicle that is not meant to have incredible traverse speeds and isn't meant to be able to repair its tracks, and its lack of turret should mean that it is doomed, is now this kind of all-purpose derpy vehicle that can just continue to plow through its opponents. Crew 2.0, if it goes into the game as it is, will be incredibly tricky to know about the combat capacities of the enemy vehicle. The way that it currently stands is that none of the abilities can be taken so far as that it can be so game-changing as Crew 2.0 will enable them to be. If you think about an opponent's abilities to enhance their tracks, that's something that you can currently see with Equipment 2.0. Do they have increased hit points? Do they have more hit points than the vehicle should usually have? If that's the case, then they're obviously using the durability module, and then you can change your play to be able to account for that. How are you meant to change your play to account for an Object 268 version 4 that you can't even track? And also that you can get bumped into by a tiny little amount like this, and then you get ram-killed by. What you're going to see me do here is now pretty much a one-way ticket. We've used a speed build on the Object 268 version 4 to go on top of the hill, and seeing how I just wanted to test how good vehicles were at ramming in the second iteration of the sandbox test server, we're just going to go and make an aggro play against this Progetto 65. And just wait for it. How much damage are we going to do? 659 with our shell, and an extra 1,038 damage with the ram. We also managed to bump into the T110E4 tiny amounts there. We do 63 damage to him and 42 with the subsequent shell against the Progetto, and boop, there you go. Goodbye to you. Now look, what I've done here is definitely not the most intelligent, but can medium tanks do it as well? Well, the answer is yes. Let's take the fastest medium tank in the game, which definitely isn't the heaviest, the CS63, and see if we can go on a little bit of a warpath. The T49 hits me for 326. I ram them, do 4 critical hits to them, do 668 ramming damage, as well as the 368 damage that we did with our shell, and then just casually drive away. I drive like a bit of a moron here, there's no doubt about that. How do you counter that? How do you counter a medium tank that has such crazy mobility that also has the capacity to ram you as well? We're going to go and make another aggro play to show that it's not what you can just do against light tanks. Let's ram the Char Future 4, for example. Definitely not the heaviest medium tank in the game, but far from one of the lightest. We're going to make our way up the slope at about 60, come down the slope. We're reaching about 70 kilometers an hour as we ram the player for about 700 there. 711 to be exact. How do you counter this? How do you stop a vehicle from shooting you for 400 and ramming you for 700? Now, obviously, it's not such a big deal if you're a Char Future 4 and you've got some friends who are autoloaders as well. I'm playing on the sandbox test server to try and test what you are going to be able to do. But imagine in the slower games, maybe if you're in a smaller, lighter armored vehicle against the kind of super aggressive players that just want to take you out the game and they don't really care about surviving in it. What they're going to be able to do with a setup like this is far above and beyond what is currently possible in the game. And remember, you're only going to be able to get the bells and whistles like controlled impact after you've got all of the fundamental skills. You're going to have to get brothers in arms first. You're going to have to get the maintenance to be able to improve your tracks. So don't think that you're going to be able to take controlled impact on your vehicles unless you're starting to get towards level 70 or level 80. It's just not going to be a possibility. And remember, as I highlighted, unless you play the game only in 1 or 2 specific tanks and you play a lot, or alternatively, you've got a hell of a lot of cash, you're not going to be able to get those bells and whistles, but there's no way to guarantee that the rest of the player base or the person on the enemy team won't have them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight the most disgusting thing about Crew 2.0, as if everything that you've seen was not enough, that I would go as far as to say was fundamentally flawed, abhorrent, and if Wargaming seriously intend to put this inside the game, it's something that's worthy of quitting over. And that is that once you've managed to get your commander or your crew to 80, which remember requires 6.75 million experience, you can actually push your crew further. Now, Wargaming have changed it so you can't use crew books, aka credits, to continue to do this. However, what you can do is you can use free experience. Free experience, something that you can convert using gold in your account to be able to achieve. There are going to be 8 levels that you are going to have to jump through if you want to be able to fully max out a tank and be able to call it as competitive as it could possibly be. Now, each level gives you a certain percentage of vehicle handling. Vehicle handling is Wargaming's new term for basically crew skill percentage, i.e. Brothers in Arms in the current system gives you 5% crew skill. And just how much do you think you get after 8 levels? You get 15% vehicle handling, aka crew skill. That's the equivalent of having not 1, not 2, but 3 regular vents equipped on a tank, just because you've continued to grind a commander after the 6.75 million experience that you've had to grind through them to reach level 80. To put this into perspective, why don't we try switching out the commanders? Here we see Roderick Short. Roderick Short is level 80 and hasn't managed to spend all of the experience they would need to be able to get to the 8 different levels of prestige. Roderick Short has 4,532 damage per minute on the Badger. Why don't we switch them out instead to Marjorie Jackson, who has gone all the way up to level 80 and then beyond, reaching maximum level, aka 88, if you want to look at it like that. Marjorie has 4,801 damage per minute on the Badger. And of course, this crew skill disparity between Marjorie and Roderick is not only going to affect the damage per minute of the vehicle, it has better accuracy by 0.02, better aim time by 0.08. And also look at the view range difference. 451 goes up to 477. All the way down to things like the traverse speed of the vehicle, which goes from 28.13 degrees a second to just shy of 30 degrees a second. All of these things are effectively going to become a play to win, or let's be more realistic, a pay to win advantage in World of Tanks. But if you thought it was going to be cheap to become a super tank, well, you might have another thing coming. To get level 1 prestige, it's going to cost you just shy of 50,000 free experience or 250,000 crew training grinded. And that will give you, boom, that 3% crew skill. The next level costs 100,000 free experience or 500 crew training. After this, it's 1 million crew experience or 200,000 free experience. Scaling up to 1.75 million experience, to 5 million experience, 10 million experience, 15 million experience to be able to achieve the next level. And then I believe the final one is 20 million experience. All in all, to go from prestige level 1 up to prestige level 8 is going to cost you 53,500,000 experience. And if we add to that how long it took you to be able to go from level 1 to level 80 before you start to prestige, it's 60,250,000 experience in World of Tanks. Yeah, ladies and gents, that's a little different to where my Type 5 Heavy was at 2 million experience, and I feel that I'm just as more or less as competitive as everyone else. If you were to do this with free experience alone, it would cost you over 12 million free experience, which of course at a conversion ratio of 1 gold to 25 experience is 482,000 gold. But of course, you're going to have to grind the 12 million XP on your other vehicles to be able to convert, right? So just how much real money would it cost me to get 482,000 gold in World of Tanks? Well, let's try 482,000. Oh, it doesn't actually let me buy more than 50k at a time. All right, well, 48,200 gold would cost me £135.67. So that means if I was to do that 10 times, well, firstly, Amex is probably going to contact me and tell me that there's been some kind of fraud on my card. But that would be £1,356.70. Or for all of my lovely American viewers out there, just shy of 1,900 United States dollars. This is as close to insanity as I have ever seen in a video game. I would usually love to say that I have no idea what Wargaming are thinking and to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I know exactly what they're thinking. They're thinking that people are going to either sit there and grind their game as pretty much a full-time job to be able to get competitive, or people are just going to get their credit card out and buy insane amounts of gold to be able to make maybe one of their vehicles truly special and a super tank inside the game. This is pathetic. It's predatory, it's disgusting, and it has no place inside the game. We're talking about the difference in having 3 ventilations on your tank or 1.5 premium consumables on top of all of the other advantages which you could apply to your vehicles as well. This whole system is probably the most stupid thing that I've seen in a video game, if not the most greedy thing that I've ever seen a company do. And what makes me incredibly worried is this is Wargaming's second iteration specifically of the Prestige system. Previously, on the first iteration of the Sandbox test server, you could get up to 21% of level of vehicle handling. Now they've nerfed it down to 15. Wargaming, this number, unless it's 0, is always going to be completely unacceptable. It is of vital importance that we as a World of Tanks community strongly let Wargaming know that anything like this should not and will not go into the game. As after 10 years of playing the game, 90% of the player base won't even have a crew that reaches level 80 when Crew 2.0 is released, let alone one that is going to push above and beyond, most likely using their wallet to become a super tank that you are just not going to be able to compete with. So Wargaming, you suggest that you've taken our feedback seriously and that you've made decent improvements to Crew 2.0. I don't think you have at all. And there's no doubt why the community are letting you know with the feedback on your YouTube video that this will not stand. Ladies and gentlemen, this is seriously one of the kinds of things that could just make this game not even worth playing unless you are paying significantly to be able to play it. And to all of the World of Tanks community out there watching, considering that Wargaming didn't even really listen to us the first time round, I think now is more important than ever to respond with more conviction. So if you want to get listened to by Wargaming, then what you want to do is download the Sandbox test server, play a few games on it this weekend, and then hopefully you will get one of the feedback pop-ups that arrives in your regular client and let Wargaming know just what you think about the idea of not being competitive in the next version of World of Tanks unless you're willing to either grind or pay to get through millions and millions of experience on each one of your crews. So ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. I'm going to be honest, I hate making these kind of videos. I hate seeing the kinds of things that Wargaming are thinking are acceptable to push upon us. Either way, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't and you hated it, give it a thumbs down, however, and let me know in the comments what you think about this entire system. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.